And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today we are going to talk about formats. The fall format for this year has been released, as well as the first update to Incursion. But before we get into any of that, I want to give a shout out to all of my patrons, and specifically Roland, Peter, Patrick, Justin, Jason, and Brad. These people help keep the lights on. If you like what we're doing here and want to join everyone in the coolest clubhouse in Versus, patreon.com/thebuildphase. Okay, let's dive right into the meat of the topic today. And I want to start with the boss battle format. So there's a couple things to say here. Before we even get into the boss versus boss format, let's note, I think this is the first time ever where we are getting one format. Generally, at the post-Gen Con format release, we get winter and we get spring for next year. So at this point, we know what the midwinter format is going to be. And I'm well aware of this because a lot of times I take this winter format off. After the push for Gen Con, this is the time of year where I tend to play a little bit less Versus, and I start looking towards midwinter as the next big event. So maybe what they're trying to do here is preserve hype between events and prevent people from focusing on, say, the next regional they're going to and only doing one at a time. If that's the case, that's really cool. I'm totally on board with that. Well, of course, I would like to know more information. I mean, I would like to see a whole year of formats. I'd like to see the roadmap of formats going into the future, even ones that like include team affiliations that are redacted or whatever. I always want more information. But if what they're trying to do is have an eye on preserving hype for, hey, we've noticed people start to focus on midwinter before the winter format's even over, okay. I don't think that's the case, though. If that was the marketing decision they made, okay, I totally agree with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It makes sense. But I think probably what the case is they don't know what Featured Format 18 is going to be because they don't know what cards we're going to have in our hands come spring format time. And I think that all routes back to the distribution issues. At this point, it's hard to know exactly what's going on because it feels like this is no longer, hey, getting the cards manufactured is difficult. Getting the raw materials, getting the ink, getting whatever it is off the boats to be able to print the cards or whatever. I think this has now reached the point where we're tied up in a legal rights issue, and that's why we haven't seen new cards with the exception of Crossover 4, we haven't seen new cards for this whole year, which is, I think, without going back and double checking it, I'm pretty sure we're in the longest drought of Versus ever, which is tough. I mean, especially knowing what's on the horizon, it's tough to sit here with no cards because I'm a little worried what's going to happen is we're going to get like WandaVision, and then 2 weeks later we're going to get the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then right on top of that Mortal Kombat's going to come out, and then right on top of that the boys are going to, and we're going to end up with this like no breathing room for any of the products where we don't really get I can't be excited about WandaVision because I already have to be playing Falcon and Winter Soldier. I mean, I guess I don't have to be, but the impulse is there. Everybody, as fans of the game, we want to play what the new stuff is, and if the expansions come out on top of each other, it makes it hard to fully swim in the water of each individual expansion, and that is something as a player I really like to do. I like to get to know the new cards. I'm off on a huge tangent. I thought we were going to talk about formats today. So boss versus boss battles. This is going into effect starting on October 1st, and it will take us through to the end of the year on December 31st. The title says it all. Boss versus boss battles. What do you think it's going to be? You're right. So you choose a boss battle card, and you choose a main character with the same name. There's reminder information here that note some boss cards are playable with photographic or illustrated versions. Standard photograph and illustrated deck building rules still apply. Now, like if you choose to play photographic Thanos, the Thanos card itself, the boss battle card, will still be the illustrated art. So it doesn't necessarily, your boss doesn't necessarily have to match the art, but it has to match the name. When you build your deck, you can play, okay, this is just explaining the universe rule, but build a good loyalty or evil loyalty deck depending upon the alignment of your main character. So it does notate here that most main characters are clearly either good or evil on all their levels, but if a main character changes between good and evil teams between levels, you use the alignment of their level 1 card. If the main character has no team affiliation, death, you can choose either good loyalty or evil loyalty. So to be clear here, each supporting character in your deck must have at least one good/evil team affiliation and no evil team affiliations. Each/good. Each other card in your deck and out of game piles with a team affiliation can also have only good team affiliations. So this is a little different than we've seen loyalty defined elsewhere. So this is going to prevent Winter Soldier 4-drop from Photographic, who is both good and evil. You can't play him in this format. I believe this was clarified somewhere by Veets that this is not changing the overall rules for how loyalty works more broadly, but within the specific silo of boss battles, this is how the loyalty rule is going to work. So if you choose Magneto, all your characters have to have team affiliations and have to have evil team affiliations. Each other card in your deck. Yeah, so you cannot have good at all. So that closes the door on dual affiliated cards again. So what do we think about this? It's fine. The timing of it's a little awkward because we did so much boss battle stuff at the start of the year that I'm kind of like not super excited about boss battle stuff, but this is the time of year where I think slotting in goofy formats like this makes all the sense in the world, because Gen Con is always kind of the premier format. It's whatever the most competitive, best balanced format we're going to see for the year is. That's the format they tend to slot in over the summer. And I think they're probably aware that there's a fair number of people who play Versus throughout the beginning of the year, and then as we get into these winter months and we get our November expansion, which is usually kind of an offbeat something, a non-Marvel IP, or up until in the before times, it was a non-Marvel IP. It's been a little different these last couple of years. And then the crossover set. These are things that tend to appeal, like crossover particularly, now that we know it's going to come packed with terrains and alternate game modes. These are things that are not as squarely targeted at the most hardcore players among us. These are more casual friendly products. So having a more casual friendly format over the winter months of the year when there aren't a lot of events going on, I think makes total sense. I'm fine with it. This existing as a format, I'm fine with it. Am I that excited about it? I don't know. I like that the good and evil split is there. We're going to have cards like In Good Hands, which the small number of good bosses are going to be able to... Is it just Fing Fang Foom? Is that the only good affiliated boss? A lot of the ramp cards, things like Mantis, which I think are really, really powerful in boss decks. Again, that's going to be siloed off to one side, and I think it's only Fing Fang Foom is going to be able to use them. I don't have all the bosses in front of me here. So that's cool. Breaking up Kane. Again, I'm just listing off the resource disruption stuff. So you're not going to have a deck that's going to be able to have Cosmo and Avalanche and Mirage. Like, it's going to be broken up some. Does that make that big of a difference? There is a pretty wild swing between the different boss cards. Some of them do really crazy powerful stuff. Assuming that they've all been balanced in the sense of having multiple players be able to attack, it makes me think something like Ultron that gains like a big benefit from building up a huge board. When you're only facing somebody 1 versus 1, how is that going to change the balance of it? Overall, I like this. I personally am... Given that I haven't even finished my boss analysis series, I am just slightly burned out on thinking about boss battle cards. Some of that is the outgrowth of, well, that's going to be another show. But overall, I think this is a fine format. Even if it doesn't get me super excited, this would feel really weird to play in any kind of like a competitive event with like legitimate stakes. To have to play with these boss cards feels a little off, but that's not what they did here. They didn't put this out as the, hey, you're going to be playing this at Midwinter format, or hey, you're playing this at Gen Con. This is the, hey, let's do something a little bit weird here at the end of the year format. And I think that's okay. I mean, I think it's pretty well known that I tend to lean a little more towards a try-hard tournament kind of constructed analysis of the game. But we are not hostile to kitchen table players here on this show. I've played a ton of silly decks. I think this is kind of a silly format, and that's okay. This is probably not going to end up being my favorite format, but I think I have already done kind of this. Whitman and I have played a bunch of games where we've played bosses versus bosses. We haven't used this exact rule set and how this good loyalty, evil loyalty. I think we also didn't even use the photographic illustrated rules when we played boss versus boss, which makes Ultron pretty insane when you get to run all the illustrated ones and all of the photographic ones. Nuts. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Is it going to be like hyper competitive? Like, probably. What are there? A total of like 9 bosses? Like, that doesn't feel. Let me see if I can look this up real quick. This is not finding me what I want. Okay, figured it out. I was trying to search using keywords. So on the website, on the Versus Deck Builder website, there's 9 total bosses. And I think this is all of them. Yeah, because Magneto was, and Loki and Kingpin were the new ones. Yeah, so that's a pretty limited pool of main characters that you have to choose from. Admittedly, it's a little deeper than it actually shows here because Thanos has, I think, 3 different versions. Ultron has 2 different versions. Magneto has 2 different versions, but one of them we don't really need to talk about. Loki has at least 2 different versions. So there is more than just straight up 9 characters available, but it's a pretty limited pool overall of main characters. So again, casual friendly. I kind of understand if like the hardcore tournament players look at this format and go, this is not for me. This kind of reminds me of the Battle Royale format, which again, as a format, I kind of liked it. And it was very new player friendly. A lot of the tournament people were like, this is total garbage. I don't want to play this. And that's okay. You don't have to play in every format. Like, that's fine. Overall, though, I admit that I'm pretty positive about this format. It does catch me at a time when I'm not as inclined to be playing boss stuff, but I am sure over winter break, we're going to do some boss versus boss stuff, me and the kids, and it's going to be fun. So, a little bit of a mixed review on the boss versus boss format. I would like to know what the spring format is going to be for next year, what is going to be featured at midwinter, but we don't have that information yet. Okay, so let's move on to the first ever Versus 2PCG incursion event. So 23 players battled out at Gen Con, and their performance and choice of decks led to this, the first wave of destroyed cards. To refresh everyone's memory, every sanctioned incursion event will result in 1 or more cards getting destroyed, which means they are no longer allowed at future incursion events. These destroyed cards are still legal in all other formats, just not sanctioned incursion events. This will lead to a constantly shifting card pool and the opportunity for dedicated players to adapt alongside the format. So when this idea was first proposed, I think I referred to it as Upper Deck trying to have their cake and eat it too, where they want to not ban cards. Clearly, for whatever reason, and whatever the reasons are, I probably disagree with them, Upper Deck has been very resistant to banning cards and even errating cards that cause kind of problematic or unfun or negative play experiences. They just don't want to do it. And I kind of get it. You know, again, to be fair to them, the promise of the distribution model is that everybody gets all the cards and you get to play with all your cards. And while that sounded awesome when the game first started, we've clearly run into some problems here and there over the years. And this format, I think, is Upper Deck's attempt at trying to solve that problem, to not ban cards officially, but give us a format where cards are banned. Also, I do have some things I want to talk about with regard to multiverse, but we'll do that on another day. So I cannot comprehend why this came out this way, but the list of destroyed cards is giving us the collector number and only the collector number. So FAN-031, FAN-032. Like, we get to supporting characters, and it's XFB009, XFB007, XFB008. Like, I realize it's really nitpicky, but why are those like not in the numerical order? Like, come on. Fortunately, Justin McDowell on the Facebook actually translated all of the collector's numbers into actual words for those of us who don't care about or pay attention to collector's numbers. So let's run down the list of the cards from the first incursion. Doctor Doom main character, Cape Pride, Outriders, all 3 gunmen, every 1-cost Sentinel, including those in Crossover 4, Senator Kelly, Nullifier, Bifrost, and I Need Your Help. So I didn't play in this event, but there were some people on Facebook commenting about how this list of banned card or destroyed cards does not actually make sense, because some of if the proposed theory was that we're going to delete cards based on their performance within incursion events, not all of these cards performed in such a way where that was justified by their performance. Okay, fine. That may totally be true, but like, let's also admit that that whole thing is like a little bit of a fig leaf. Like, we all know what the problem cards are. Like, if you're paying attention to this game, you know what the problem cards are. It is a little weird that they chose to delete Doctor Doom as a main character entirely rather than just hitting the machine, when really the machine getting that out early is the problematic interaction with inventions. It's not so much anything else Doctor Doom can invent. Cape Pride, 100%. Outriders, 100%. All 3 lone gunmen feels a little weird. I think they could have just done what they was done by the Modern Council and hit Langley. Although, to be fair, hitting just Langley is almost the same as destroying all 3 of the lone gunmen. So that goes, as well as I Need Your Help. So that whole package is gone. I don't totally understand this. I cannot see how I Need Your Help is even a little bit of a threat if the lone gunmen are gone, especially all of them. But that's what they chose to do. Deleting every single 1-cost Sentinel. Again, if you're deleting Doctor Doom, I guess there's other people that it feels like deleting all of the 1-cost Sentinels is an attempt to make the machine not completely broken. But you could have also just deleted the Masters of Evil Ultron. If you destroyed Ultron, then the 1-cost Sentinels machine combo doesn't let you draw your entire deck. So it's considerably more fair. And this is a little frustrating, particularly considering that Master Mold as the main character is now completely dead forever in the incursion format. You're never going to be able to play Master Mold without the 1-cost Sentinels. So I don't know that I totally like that, but hey, this is what they decided they needed to do. Senator Kelly is obvious, of course. The Nullifier is a little surprising, but I kind of get it. It's been a frustrating and problematic card. Its rulings have shifted a few different ways over the years, and it can create a really negative play experience. Now, I know the goal with Incursion is not to try to create the most balanced versus or the most positive play experience, but I kind of get why they would hit Nullifier. I have absolutely no idea why they would hit Bifrost. So my theory with Bifrost is that photographic cards tend to be a little more powerful. They tend to have a little bit more impactful keywords. Often the stats are, not always, but often the stats are a little bit juiced compared to what you're paying for in Illustrated. And I think this is still just shell shock from old versus where search was too prolific. There was search everywhere. The game was rotten with search, and it led to kind of formulaic feeling games. So you take that into the photographic universe where we have like clear best cards at a lot of drops, but particularly in photo, because it's such a smaller card pool. So the potential playable cards at each drop is a much smaller list. And then when you add in something like Bifrost, now you're hitting that same card more consistently than the game designers want to see. I am the kind of player who really likes consistency in my games, so it feels a little bit weird that they would pop Bifrost. And I'm kind of going on a long walk to see what the justification for it is. So overall, how do I feel about this? I feel like I wanted to see them hit more cards. My original, I don't know if it was a prediction, but my hope was that they were going to hit like 20 cards in the first one. And I guess if you count each individual Sentinel as a separate card, they did, success. But you know what I mean. I would have liked to see Maximus on this list. I would have liked to see Dark Phoenix on this list. Yeah, they're sort of hiding this behind, hey, we're just getting rid of the things that people played. But like, we know what the cards are that create these negative play experiences. All of that being said, like, can we just, like, collectively as a group get our expectations in order? Unless Overdeck was willing to make a much bigger cut to the card pool, the Incursion is not going to be like the cool, unique thing that I think we all want it to be until we're looking at like Incursion version like 5 or 6. This is actually probably more cards than I expected them to cut. It's fewer cards than I wanted them to cut, and some of them I don't totally understand why they were cut. But this is about where I expected them to land in the total number of cards that are destroyed. And I suspect at the next incursion event, we're going to see roughly a similar number of cards. So once we get up to like the fourth or fifth incursion, I think is where we're going to really start to see some meta shifts. We're going to see some different things. And yeah, as a fan of the game who's been wanting this kind of thing, this kind of format, like multiverse with a ban list, the modern format, the community made our own version of Incursion. We're on iteration 2 already, and it was created, what, back in 2021, late 2020? I don't remember exactly. But it's been a couple years, and within build phase events, we've been doing this kind of stuff for even longer than that. And the community's been talking about it for even longer than that. So the idea that we want essentially multiverse with a ban list is not a new concept. And I think we all want it to already be where we want it to be right now. And Upper Deck is going to go slow. They're going to take their time. And I think Bert actually said, like, Incursion 5 is where it's going to get good. And I agree with that as well. Like, somewhere in that range. Now, if with the second one, if the community reaction to this one and the way that a lot of people are saying that they kind of missed the mark. If that community feedback is heard, and with Incursion 2, they come in and just set fire to the top 10% of the cards and say, okay, now do it, I will be all in. That would be thrilling to have a massive change like that. Just cut staples and main characters and like no more Lilith, no more Jessica Jones, none of these cards that anybody's ever complained about. Like if you've ever complained about it on the internet, it is gone. That would be a really big shakeup. But I get it. While I am one of the people who would like to see that, and I think that kind of expectation or hope is where a lot of the criticism for this Incursion update is coming from. I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouths. If somebody, I'm not trying to speak for anybody else. I think that you just sometimes your desires just have to cave to reality, and to have the expectation that they were going to come in and cut 25 or 30 cards right off the bat, I wanted it again. Like I keep going back and forth because that's really what I wanted to see, but I think we probably should have known all along that something like this was going to happen. Now, some of these particular card inclusions I do think can be criticized. A few cards that weren't touched I think could probably be criticized. But overall, this is a good first step. There is some feedback that I hope Upper Deck hears about this and like give us what we want. We've been asking for it for so long. But overall, if they're going to take baby steps with Incursion, and I think we should have all kind of known from the beginning that this is how they were going to handle it, this is a decent first baby step, I guess. So that's kind of where I land. I want to be more excited about Incursion, but to kind of quote Bert, talk to me at Incursion 5. I think that's probably where Incursion is going to start to become its whole own new thing. Like, I know not everybody who listens to the show is as avid a follower of card games across different types of card games as I am, but I remember in Hearthstone when they first started formats, how for like the first 2 years the modern format, the standard I think is what they call it over there, standard format, didn't really feel any different than Wild. And it took time for the formats to kind of diverge and become their own unique thing. And that's where we're at with Incursion. And while I sympathize, I want Incursion to be what I want it to be right now as well. I kind of understand. If Upper Deck has taught us anything about how they're going to handle verses, it is with tremendous caution and very slowly. So every positive change we've seen in the game has taken a long time to get implemented. Generally speaking, they get us where we want to be. They deliver a card game that is, I think, one of the best, if not the best card games currently being published, full stop. It is definitely my favorite. And I would compare it to any other card game that's being published right now and argue vociferously that it is superior to them. But difference of opinion. So I don't want to I realize I'm a little bit negative on both of these formats, but they're not bad. It's fine. Like the boss battle thing, it's fine. Like I can't be totally thrilled about it, but it's not a format that's totally made for the type of player that I am, and that's okay. I realize the hardcore competitive players, the people who care about incursion, are probably like 5% of the player base, maybe even less. But I'm part of that 5%. So I sympathize with a lot of those impulses. And frankly, that small percentage of the player base is the most active, engaged, vocal fans of the game. I would say that the hardcore players are probably the best evangelists of the game, or the people who go out and actually teach other people how to play, or the people who care about the game enough to talk for 25 minutes straight about it into a microphone alone in a room. So I don't think. I just want to be clear that I don't think Upper Deck should ignore the feedback from or the desires of the hardcore tournament players, while I can at the same time acknowledge that those of us that would self-identify as like hardcore, serious competitive players, we should also be able to acknowledge that we're a minority and what we want isn't always necessarily going to map onto what is best for the long-term health of the game. All that being said, come on, guys, Incursion is for us. It's for the hardcore players. Get out. We don't need a scalpel. I want a machete. That's what I want to see. So, good first step. I'd like to see bigger and more impactful cuts or destroys in Incursion. And boss battles is it's going to be fine. It's like candy corn. And this time of year, I'm going to play some boss battles, and I think I'm going to have a good time with it overall. So, little bit of criticism, a little bit of positivity in today's show. It's nice to see that the formats came out. I can't pretend that it's not a little bit of a worrying sign that we didn't also get the spring format at this time, but hopefully that just boils down to whatever the distribution issues are and not something more serious for the overall health of the game. Okay, that is going to be the show for today. Until next time, go win some games.